Thank you for joining us at the How to Build a No-Code Contract AI training practice. Today, we've got something super special prepared for you. We're going to be showing you the best practices for contract AI training done by one of our hosts, Resa Jacob. And we're going to have a little bit of an introduction from Noah. So without further ado, Noah, could you kick us off?
Yes, thanks, Khalil, and thank you to our guests for coming. I've seen hellos from friends in the audience. I'm sad I can't see you back. I'm just even more sad that I can't see you in person because it'd be really nice to, but do really appreciate your being here. I think this is going to be interesting, and I think there's a whole bunch of really useful content that we're going to cover around this topic. So when we first started the business that became Kira Systems back in 2011, I spent probably 80% of my time for the first 2 years reading through contracts and highlighting important parts of them so that my co-founder, Dr. Alexander Hudek, could take that information and build algorithms that were good at finding data in contracts, right? So I would pick up a random contract, generally sourced from Edgar, not always, and I'd read it and I'd pull out important parts, and Alex would go off and take those important parts and build models that ideally would find what we were looking for. And then I would look at the models and we'd see how they performed. We'd sort of test it on some other contracts, and then we'd refine the models further and we'd refine the training data further. But that whole process of creating the training data is hugely important and hugely time consuming. So let me take you through how I did it for the first couple of years. So we're talking like 2011 to 2014 or so, when this was, I was the only person doing this. Initially, I started out by reading a contract, and I had a Word document set up in a chart form. So I'd say, like, here are the title, here's the parties, here's the assignment clause, here are the change of control clauses, here's the exclusivity clause. And I would say, like, the change of control clause is this, and I would cut and paste it from the original contract into that other document. I've heard of other people doing this with Excel charts or the like, and I'd say it's on page 32 or whatever, 32 of 65. And I went through, say, 50 contracts this way, and it was like hard work, right? Because you had to go through these contracts really thoroughly, and you really can't make a ton of mistakes when you're annotating because you're teaching the system. Like, it was always in the back of my head as I did this work that someday there was going to be a junior lawyer at my old firm, at Davis Polk, at Latham, and it was going to be the middle of the night, and they were going to be, before any of these firms were really clients, right? But that it was going to be the middle of the night, and that they would be working away, and that if I wasn't accurate in my work, that they wouldn't be accurate in theirs. And so I took the sort of responsibility of doing that accurately very seriously. But that meant that it took forever to get this thing done. And so I would go through all these contracts, I put them into a word chart, and then pass those word charts off to Alex. And about a few months in, I had like one of the more awful days up to that point of the business, which was Alex came to me and said, you know, I think we'd be better off if we captured the whole document instead of just these segments that you're pulling out, because we're losing a lot of data this way, and it's not the right way to do it. And so I was like, so what about the old stuff? And it was like, well, you got to redo it. So I sort of sulked for a day or so, and then went off and redid the work. And doing it the new way, I basically took an XML file. And Khalil, can you put up that slide for a second? I'll just show people what I'm talking about. So this is the second generation, is that I went and I got an XML version. So that's like a text only version of the document. And I would go through and I had to add these HTML tags. And I didn't really know what like HTML tag it was at the time, but I had to learn. But if you look up at the top, you can see that sort of gate, like the open bracket, legal fees, close bracket. And then there's the whole segment that I'm trying to teach the system covers legal fees. There's also like an alternative dispute resolution close tag there. There's a close tag for legal fees. Same thing for change of control, thing with making it a specific type of change of control. I'd add in all those things, and often in successive iterations, because you sort of decide partway through that, we weren't just going to do change of control, but that we were going to do change of control core and change of control category assigned to acquirer. And it was like truly slow, hard going with doing this. But this was the second generation of how we did it. And the systems that Alex had built would go and ingest these, and Alex would sort of take it from step to step to step in the pipeline. And then he'd spit me back results, and we'd go through the results together. And then every once in a while, he'd do another training run, but doing the training runs themselves were quite time consuming. So I couldn't get him to do those all the time. And it was like this really long, painful process. And we had long talked about, you can take this slide down now, please. We had long talked about automating this kind of pipeline, model building pipeline. But Alex was always saying it was like 3 to 6 months to 2 years to do it. And then he sort of went quiet for a couple of weeks, like 3 weeks. This is in like early 2013. And around May 2013, he sort of popped out and was like, hey, can you try this thing that I built? And it turns out that he built the first version of this feature that we ended up calling it Kira Quick Study, where a user like me in those days could just highlight a document on screen for what I felt like teaching it. So instead of having to add these painful HTML tags, I got to highlight text and then tell the system what it was, like this is a change of control clause. And the system would then automatically go off and teach the software to find new change of control clauses or assignment clauses or, base rent provisions. And I remember smiling for like 2 months straight. I would like take my dad through building a model. And the first 3 demos that I did, all 3 places became customers. And it was like really totally transformative to have this user interface based quick study tool. And I think really helped propel Kira in the market. I had built the original 25, 30 models through great pain with Kira. I think there's only sort of 3 of those models left in Zuva, which will hopefully be eliminated very soon and replaced by much better ones. But with that interface, what we were able to do is hire other people to teach the software, number one. And number two, those people could go a lot faster. They could get up to speed faster and they could actually do the work faster. And over time, that team, instead of the 30 models that I built over a course of like 2.5 years, from 2016, we probably had about 100 models. From 2016 to the time we did the split out, we were at over 1,200 models built, right? So like the pace of being able to build models was way quicker, partially because we could have more people at it. What's even more amazing though, is that our customers built more than 20,000 models using that interface, including ones in English, but also in other languages like Danish and German and French and Portuguese. And so it really was just such a scalable tool for model training. Over that time, we got a lot of experience with what it takes to build up a large legal knowledge engineering team. I think we, by our high point, had probably about 15 people in the area of legal knowledge engineering. And I suspect that's probably one of the larger legal knowledge engineering operations out there. And not only did we have those 15 people, but we also had a whole bunch of contractors that they worked with. So it was like a bunch of full-time employees and then contractors. All to say that, number one, teaching your legal AI to find new information is no easy task. And we learned a lot about that over the years. And number two, that Resa, who we have on here, was a star member of that legal engineering team at Kira and has gone on to become our head of legal knowledge engineering at Zuva. And I think she's super knowledgeable. And if you're interested in how you build models, she's probably one of the best people in the world to learn from on this. So I'm really excited to have her tell us what she knows. And with that, I hand it over to Resa.
Thanks, Don. So yeah, I am Resa Jacob. I'm the Senior Manager of the Legal Knowledge Engineering team at Zuva. So as Noah mentioned, we are the team that builds and maintains the 1,200 plus built-in smart fields that Zuva Doc AI comes with. Prior to Zuva, I worked at Kira Systems, and I was responsible for training the general commercial built-in machine learning models there. And then prior to that, I was a corporate lawyer at a large law firm in Toronto. So I have been building AI models since April 2018. And so throughout that time, we have learned some best practices, and that's what we're going to share with you today. So the first step is setting clear parameters. So prior to training any models, it's important to have a clear understanding of what you're looking to capture. So the parameters can be set by anyone that is familiar with the project and the documents and the concepts that are being captured. So in some cases, as is done at Zuva, it may make sense to have a subject matter expert set the parameters. So, a lawyer setting the parameters for legal concepts in documents or contracts that they are familiar with. In other cases, that may not be necessary. So, if you were looking, for example, if you're looking to pull out an address from an invoice, which appears, in the same place in each invoice, that obviously does not require a high level of expertise. So it really depends on, what you're looking to capture. So the next thing to consider is that concepts can be worded very differently in different types of documents. And so they may include more or less information. So you want to make sure that you've considered how that concept is presented in different types of documents. And this is closely tied to the second step, which we'll cover next. So definitions is a good example. So, are definitions something that are going to be captured by your model? Or are they only going to be captured if they're embedded in the relevant section? Or is the full definition also going to be captured if it appears elsewhere in the contract? So it's a good idea to review a few different types of documents when setting out the parameters to get an understanding of how different documents may present similar or the same concepts. It's also recommended to keep track of all these judgment calls that you're making. So, what you're explicitly including or explicitly excluding. So the parameters can change and evolve as you begin annotating, which we'll go through soon, but it's a good idea to have a clear sense at the start what you really want to capture. This list of parameters will also help you with drafting a description for the model when it's complete. So the next step is assembling your training documents. So this is closely tied to step number one. And so it's important that your training set is representative of the document types that you intend to use that field on. So for example, if you want a field to work on service, supply, and distribution agreements, it's important that all of those document types are included in your training set. And this step might take some time, especially if you're collecting, various document types from different departments within your organization. And it may be more challenging, especially if the documents aren't kept in a centralized database. That being said, we do feel this is a very necessary step and something that's well worth it. So we have found that using a field on a document that it's not trained on is going to probably lead to less favorable results. So the next step, when Noah kind of alluded to this before, is actually identifying the concepts in the documents and highlighting. And so we're going to put up a slide that will show an example of how we're currently doing this, which it's pretty simple. You basically, highlight the relevant text and then select which concept it's related to. So ideally, the person that's annotating the documents is the individual that set the parameters. If that's not the case, ideally they have a very clear understanding of what the documents are and are familiar with that type of document. So this is going to be it's going to just be more efficient. So if the person annotating is familiar with the document type and able to, quickly navigate to the relevant section of the document without having, to slowly read through the entire document to get a feel for it, that's going to make the process go a lot quicker. That being said, we also, do use document search functionality, which can assist with this step and also make sure nothing's been, missed or overlooked. So as we mentioned above, in some cases, this may mean that a subject matter expert should be annotating the documents, but in other cases, that might not be necessary. So it really depends on, what's being captured as to who should be annotating. So using a no-code contract analysis AI solution allows for anyone to train the models without, the need for a data scientist. So we have found that being familiar with the documents and the concepts is most important. So a technical background isn't required here, which is really nice. So annotating documents is subjective, especially for legal concepts, even for non-legal concepts. So it is recommended that only one person annotates the documents for a given field. So this will ensure consistency, which is important when training AI models. So an example is if you were looking to build a field to capture the concept of the contract term. So is the whole sentence being highlighted for the term? Is it just the word stating the actual term? So, the 3 years, is that's all that's being captured? If just the 3 years is being highlighted, is the defined term also being captured? So there are a bunch of decisions that need to be made in highlighting. So even though capturing, the concept of contract terms seems so straightforward, there actually are, a bunch of steps and considerations that need to be taken into that. And that's why it's important that the parameters have clearly been outlined and that ideally the person annotating the document has, either drafted the parameters, created them, or is very familiar with them. So the number of documents that will need to be highlighted is determined by a number of factors. So including, what's the concept being captured, how many different document types, different jurisdictions are you looking to capture? So once there are enough examples, the system will start generating suggestions. And I think we have a slide for this, but we'll start generating suggestions, which is similar to the language that has previously been annotated. So once you've gotten, let's say 30-ish examples, the quality of your suggestions, should be pretty good, and the process will just go even quicker because instead of, searching for the language and finding it and highlighting, you're instead just telling the system, yes, you found the correct language. No, you didn't. Yes, you found it, but it's not complete, and I have to make a quick adjustment. So the process will then go a lot quicker. So we recommend starting with 30 to 50 documents. More documents may be required if the concept that's being captured is an entity. So something like an address, an amount, a name, a date, something that is less than a sentence and is different in each document. So less documents may be required if the concept being captured is very similar and in a form document, but it really depends. And so 30 to 50 is a good place to start, and you should get a good feel after that, how the model is working and if it's picking up the pattern or not. So as Noah mentioned, over the years, we have built 1,200 plus out of the box fields. They have been trained by our legal knowledge engineering team. Excuse me, we're all former practicing lawyers and subject matter experts. We only train on publicly available documents. And we have intentionally built our fields to be broad. So we want them to apply to a wide variety of document types and jurisdictions, so they can apply to a wide range of customers and scenarios and industries. Each of our built-ins are tested prior to release. So we test them on a holdout set of documents that the fields have not been trained on. That's an important step. And we have gotten close to releasing fields, and right at the end, they don't pass, our testing protocols, and therefore they aren't released. We regularly maintain the fields, and we are constantly adding new fields to our field library based on market changes and customer feedback. We always welcome feedback on our existing fields, and also built-in fields that our customers would like to see. So that being said, there are a few reasons why we may not have a field out of the box. So I would say the number one reason is we don't have access to the types of documents that field would need to be trained on. So like I said, we only train on publicly available documents. So if you're looking for a field that's, would be trained on documents that aren't publicly available, it's a good chance, we're not going to have a relevant field. Oftentimes our customers and our prospects are looking for, a very specific field for a very specific use case. So as we mentioned, we're looking to build our fields broadly so they can be widely applicable, to as many customers and situations as possible. So if there isn't a wide use for our customers, we're not likely to build a specific field. Another reason is concepts appear in in documents of a jurisdiction that we don't have access to. Either we don't have access to the documents, or we don't have access to enough of the documents. So that's another situation where we're just unable to build a built-in field. That being said, we are super excited that our customers have the ability to train their own models, and Noah's going to cover this exciting announcement.
So, as I mentioned, back in 2014, we released at Kira the first version of this feature that we called Quick Study, and we refined it through the years. As we became independent with Zuva, we thought it was really important. We'd seen how much our customers had built over the years and thought it was super critical that we have functionality to do that. So we covered training functionality in two ways. Number one, Zuva itself, Doc AI product, has training APIs available. So you could build your own training interface into your own application if you're using Zuva. But for a lot of people, building a training application just isn't the right thing for their application. And it's also a lot of work. It definitely things that we've learned about building a training application over the years. And so we thought it was really important that we have our own training interface. And so our team put their heads down and took a lot of what they'd learned over the bunch of years of having a training interface, and we built a brand new one in a very accelerated time frame that I think we're all pretty thrilled with. And AI Trainer is our new training product. It's not really going to be super useful for you for training any sort of AI, but if you're trying to train contract AI to work with one of Zuva's products, then AI Trainer is a really great way to get it done. I've played with it and find it super fast and fun to use. And I think Resa would probably say the same thing. We're going to be launching AI Trainer next Thursday, is that right? April 7th. So stay tuned and reach out if you'd like to play with it or try it. Again, I thought it was a great way to build models, and I'm super proud of the Zuva team for how quickly and well they got the first version of it built. So look forward to hearing what you think about it. Try it out. If you're in the model building game, I think it'll accelerate your progress, just as having some sort of training interface accelerated ours. So with that, I think we're on to questions, aren't we?
Yeah.
Cool. So I think we got a first audience question, which is actually more about Zuva's underlying algorithms rather than training. So Ron M asks, sorry, Ron, I can't see your last name. So if you'd like credit for it, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll read it out, but I'm limited by what Zoom tells me. You ask, are there or will there be self-supervised or unsupervised algos in your products, or is everything currently supervised learning? Good question. So our supervised machine learning has layers in it. And unfortunately, I'm not, neither Resa or I is the very best person inside Zuva. It'd be better to have one of the research scientists on, but I think I can answer it respectively, I hope, but maybe Adam or Rada or Sam or someone will beat me up afterwards. But there is a unsupervised layer within our supervised algorithms, right? So there are things that are going on in there that are unsupervised. As an overall thing, we're kind of, we have a decent sized research team and have for quite a number of years, like something we've been spending sort of millions of dollars on over the years. And that research team goes and tests out what sort of state of like new things that are being released and compares it to ours. And what we found is we like our performance with the current stack. We think it performs very well and has other positive sort of speed attributes to it. So we're constantly testing stuff out. I think our belief is that Zuva should be providing the world's best contract AI, easily embeddable into your applications and easily accessible for you. And so part of that means we got to have the world's best contracts AI, and we've got the team, sort of an experienced and not small team who are constantly trying to make sure we're there. In terms of what'll be there in the future, I think what'll be in our products in the future is what makes us the world's best contract AI. So I think right now we feel these supervised algorithms are the best way to get good performance. And we say that in a not like we think it's the best, but we've actually tested our tech against other things. And we think that that our tech is pretty good at this, but you should try for yourselves. Hopefully that answers the question. Anyways, there is a level of unsupervised in there, but they are supervised. We may roll out some APIs for some unsupervised stuff in a while, but generally we are constantly testing sort of what's out there and feel that ours is good. Rainud Baker, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Rainud, has a question. If I understand you correct, this is some sort of active learning setup. Question, how do you make sure that while training models, you do not bias the algorithm too much? Is there some exploration in this learning process? And Adam actually has a beautiful answer inside the chat, so I could read it out if anyone's curious. TLDR from Adam, who if only he was answering our unsupervised question a second ago, I probably would have done it much better than me, that we've used bits and pieces internally here and there as part of the pipeline. Oh, I think that's to the wrong one. So for Adam, sorry, for Rainud, Resa, you feel like answering that one? How do we deal with bias?
Yeah, so I think we, like I said, we test the models prior to release. We test them on documents that they have not been trained on, which ensures that we're getting a true understanding of how the model will perform. I think it's important that, like I said, annotating these concepts is subjective. So it is really important that the models are being used on the document types they've been trained on. We also provide a clear description for each model of what it's intended to capture. So we do recommend, reviewing that prior to using it. So you're, the model we built is kind of what you're expecting to see when using it.
Awesome.
Okay, another question. Is there or will there be a marketplace for models trained by the community? From Narandan Thilyas. Sorry, I did not do a great job on your name, and I'm so sorry. So is there a marketplace? That is a great question. We have started to incorporate some customer models, and it's definitely something we're thinking about to enable people to trade models and swap them. Doesn't exist yet formally, though there are some customer models available or that will be available soon. But definitely something we have our eyes on. Harm Bavnik asks, what is your experience with not so well-structured documents, lousy OCR, different layouts, different languages, etc.? Do you need to train on batches of similar documents? Resa?
Yeah, so I would say it's important to train on, like I said, a representative set of the documents that you intend to use the models on. So that might include, some documents with, poor OCR or different layouts. We recommend, not limiting your documents so that they all look similar, because in that case, you're probably only going to find, the model will only find that language if it looks similar to what you've trained on. So yeah, in addition to, including different document types, I would say not only does that include, different types of agreements like service, supply, distribution, but also, different formats of how the language would appear. As for different languages, we currently we have only English models.
Hey, Resa, I think you went mute.
Goes back to ensuring the consistent.
Oh, hey, Resa, I think you went mute for a sec. Can you just, you said you finished at English models and then your sound cut out for a sec.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, we only have English models, and I would say we would recommend training on just one language. That goes back to, setting parameters. I think it'd probably be challenging for one person to train multiple languages. So I would say we would recommend limiting models to one language.
That said, we have out-of-the-box models rolling out soon in German, Brazilian Portuguese, and Quebecois French, I believe. Hopefully, Harm, that is helpful. So what is the most difficult thing or biggest challenge you've encountered on training fields? I'll start with that. So for me, there were two things. First of all, training in the pre-quick study, like in the pre-having a training interface days, was truly painful. Like it really took a massive amount of time to do this. And it took me a long time to even learn, as someone who'd been an ex-lawyer, it took me a long time to even learn how to train in the format that the system felt like learning in. So that was super hard. The second thing that was really hard was building out a team to train. And we had, I would say, just like we had three sort of iterations where it went from, so we had three iterations of training, right? Where first iteration was put the field, like just rip out the fields and put them into a Word, or other places I hear use Excel document. Second phase was use an XML document and mark that up. And the third phase was build a trainer product. We also had kind of three phases of building out a legal knowledge engineering team, where first we hired kind of a couple contractors, then we had some full-time people and a couple contractors, but still, I wouldn't say had it exactly right. And then eventually we sort of hired someone, Ann McNulty, who built out a really wonderful team there of legal knowledge engineers, and they kind of went on and sustained themselves through new leadership. And I think that was kind of our third great success at it, but it took a few years to get it right. I think we started hiring people to help me do this. I guess the first stage was just me doing it myself. So maybe 4 iterations of this. We first kind of got in those messy second and third stages in 2014. And it took us until kind of later in 2016 to get this right. So that was kind of 2 years where we kind of thought we were making progress, but I think we ended up rebuilding almost all the models built during those years. So building out that team to me was exceedingly hard, like years of work. Resa, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Noah. I think finding, the right set of people to do it is definitely, has been challenging. I think we've kind of figured it out along the way, which is nice. I also find it's sometimes challenging to get access to enough publicly available documents, whether, it's documents to start or just even enough of them. I feel like I've tried to build a few models and it's just, we kind of hit a end of the road for some concepts. But it's definitely something that we are, monitoring and closely.
And even with getting privately available, like sometimes, it's not that I think in some cases wouldn't take private documents too, but it just can be like trying to train on German documents or French documents or something like that. Like it's just very hard to get large pools of them.
Yeah.
Definitely we spent, I think, years of trying different ways of getting enough documents and kept running into walls and eventually figured something out, but it was non-trivial. All that said, the out-of-the-box models do add a ton of value. Our experience over the last decade was that probably 90% of our usage, like a heavy, heavy portion of our usage, was on models that the software came pre-trained with, right? So it's something like users really do like having pre-trained models. They like having the ability to build their own models. Sometimes they use that ability, but for many users, they're happiest just using what the system is already familiar with finding. And so having a built out corpus of things that the software knows how to find, we found super impactful commercially. I see there's a question about, can you elaborate further on subject matter experts who are ideal people? Who are ideal people, or what are the ideal roles, professionals to train fields? Resa?
Yeah, so I think at Kira, we basically had former practicing lawyers in different practice areas who were responsible for overseeing the building of those field groups. So, banking and finance, we had a banking and finance lawyer, real estate lawyer, corporate commercial, so on and so forth. So that, I think, is what we find has worked, at least for legal concepts and contracts. Like I said earlier, I think familiarity with the documents and concepts is most important. So that could be a different person, for different scenarios in different situations. We have found for us, for what we're building, former practicing lawyers are the ideal people to train legal clauses.
Ranud and Adam, for people who haven't been looking at the chat, have had a sort of vibrant discussion in there. And I think Adam's been pretty helpful overall with answering a bunch of questions, including the unsupervised learning one in a much probably more sound way than I did. So Ranud has an additional question. Oh, you know what? And Adam just answered it. Can the system also assign multiple classes to a clause? And it basically definitely possible. And it comes up quite a lot, actually. Like there's often times where a given piece of text will represent a lot of things. For example, I think of just assignment as a great example of this, right? Where it might say, this contract may not be assigned, which is an assignment clause. But if it said like, this contract may not be assigned directly or indirectly, then that would make it a change of control. Or this contract will not be assigned, as well as being an assignment clause, or this contract cannot be assigned under the meaning of such term in the 1940 Act or the Investment Advisors Act. Like that would be both an assignment clause and a change of control. So definitely a clause can and often is part of multiple clauses. There's some interesting things, in fact, as you build that into an interface about how you visualize it. And it's something we got a fair amount of experience with and can talk about. But yeah, you definitely can. And it definitely happens where annotations overlap. We have a question in the Q&A on how would a customer typically pay for an AI trainer tool like this? And how would that compare to other AI software? As far as we know, we're the only ones with an AI trainer out there. we view it as, so again, we have other tools have, like if you're using other document AIs, you can add in training data. Generally, my sense is a lot of the time you'd be adding it in that kind of generation one way that we did of training data, where it's like you put a bunch of clauses into a spreadsheet and you upload the spreadsheet and out pop your models. Or maybe I've heard other ones where they may have like, you may be able to add a set of rules or something like that in. So those are the main training tools. With other ones, in terms of an interface-based product, certainly one exists inside Kira. I think one exists in other kind of contract review tools, but in terms of like an API product like ours, I don't think there's another one beyond AI Trainer, to the best of my knowledge, but my knowledge is imperfect. AI Trainer is going to be a monthly charge. I think it's relatively reasonably priced as a monthly charge. Like I doubt it would be so expensive that anyone's going to walk away. We'll reveal the full pricing with the launch on April 7th. But basic way that we think about this is the more you train our system, the stickier a customer you're likely to be, and the more use you're likely to get out of the system. So we've kind of heavily subsidized the price of the trainer. But you will have to determine if it's right for you. More details to come on April 7th. Not trying to be too subtle, but it's like, I don't know, $50 a month. Something like that, or yearly price. I think I might be getting in trouble for revealing things I should have said, but $50 a month per user. So it's definitely not going to break the bank in terms of your Zuva or other spend, but we do think it's a really important feature so that you get the most out of Zuva, and that's why we're subsidizing the price of it. Are there any other questions? I don't see any other in the chat. I don't see any other in the Q&A. Which is good, since I seem to be a very mediocre question reader.
I think you did an excellent job, Noah.
No. It was the unsupervised one is gonna, the ex-junior associate in me, like big law junior associate in me is still cringing about it. Life goes on. Okay. Well, with that, shall we shut this down?
Definitely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, to all the attendees, to all the panelists who have been here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to spend it here. I hope that this was valuable to you. Like Noah mentioned, look out for future, the release next week and all the content that's going to come out soon. The video for this webinar will be hosted on the website info.zuva.ai/AI trainer-webinar sometime next week. So look forward to all of that. We're really excited to launch this.
And I think we will have some more webinars along this subject as well. Like we know that we aren't the only people with the perspective on how you do this, and hopefully we can, but we do think we know a decent amount about it, and hopefully we can bring some others who also know a decent amount about it, and to sort of take the state of the market in terms of training AI tools farther with what we've learned and others have. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.